Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Rachel Altvater. It is so nice to be with you here today. I am really looking forward to talking with you about child cyber ethics and mental health. Let's dive in. The following is an overview of the presentation. Impressionable children and teens can easily create any reality they want online. In some regards, creating digital personas and avatars that represent themselves can be incredibly beneficial in playful expression and exploration. In other regards, when there is a disconnect with the self, it can become easy for the false self to present itself within this platform. When the false self receives reinforcement and encouragement through acceptance, praise, and connection, it becomes more desirable to remain in a space of incongruence. While this initially feels beneficial, it is actually quite damaging to one's mental and emotional well-being in the long run. So much of what we see on social media nowadays are countless presentations of false selves, creating false realities and false expectations. It can be difficult to differentiate between our real and false selves online. I grew interest in the digital mental health world when I was in my doctoral program. I actually conducted my dissertation research on incorporation of digital technologies into play therapy practice. I was mindlessly scrolling through social media one day and saw a parent express excitement about their child playing with some traditional type of toy. I can't recall now if it was dinosaurs or blocks or something along those lines. But I thought, why is this parent so surprised that their child is playing with these toys that I'm learning about in my play therapy training are staple play therapy items? It then made me wonder, how is this impacting mental health treatment and incorporation of various toys within the play therapy sessions? I decided to interview registered play therapists and registered play therapist supervisors in America to learn more about what they were recognizing in their playrooms. Were children interested in traditional toys? Were they inquiring about digital tools? How comfortable were therapists with incorporating these various items into the playroom? I learned so much valuable information about this emerging world and have since made it my life's work. Another newer area that we all are navigating is how to best support digital native children in the online platform. How can children gain an authentic sense of self in a world that tends to be full of fabrication? Since you're going to be talking about representing ourselves in the digital platform, I want to introduce you to some of my avatars. So as you can see, I love unicorns and sparkles and rainbows. So I oftentimes have avatars represented as such. You know, something that is so important today is finding alignment. And as you can tell here, it seems like my avatars are in alignment with one another, and they are definitely in alignment with me. A lot of my work in child psychology is incorporating digital play into sessions. I have obtained extensive training in the therapeutic powers of play and how we utilize play as a medium for communication and connection. Play is a child's natural mode of communication. Our first language really is play. We learn about the world, about ourselves, and about others through our play interactions. Play offers a space for us to experiment, gain a sense of mastery and control, and try out things that we might not feel safe or comfortable trying out outside of the imaginary world. First, we're going to dive into some digital considerations for children. It's important that we recognize what is important for us to inform our children about when they are navigating the digital platform. There has been a significant surge in unkind interactions toward one another online, and it becomes more and more normalized, which then trickles down to our children. They see how adults interact in this space and seemingly believe that this is the standard way of interacting in the digital age. We all want to be good digital citizens. We are a global community, and it is essential for us to work together in a collaborative space. Since the online platform has a plethora of information that is ever growing and expanding, it is very common for us to worry about children's safety and access in this digital space. When we have clearer parameters in place online, whether that's through various controls or permissions, it provides an added layer of protection. If we aren't familiar with some of these safety concerns, it's going to become much easier for children to stumble into unknown depths online. So digital responsibility is defined as using technology in an appropriate, constructive way for oneself and others. It involves navigating a wide variety of ethical situations that relate to privacy, net neutrality, transparency, and the digital divide, among other challenges and situations. It can become quite easy for us to forget that there is another human on the other side of the screen. It's quite common for people to express things behind the screen that they might not feel as comfortable expressing in person. I read this article a while back that likened computers and the internet to an interpreter triad. What I mean by that is when an interpreter joins a session to translate language, the individuals that are talking transition to talking to the interpreter. This, of course, isn't always the case. The hope is that the individuals who are communicating to one another, and there is just a third party who is supporting the communication process. And it does alter the dynamics a bit. So this article had indicated that computers can sometimes take the place of an interpreter, where individuals are communicating via a digital device, which has a potential to alter the manner in which people are communicating. It's our responsibility to engage in constructive and connecting ways with one another. So how do we do this? First and foremost, it's important for us to be part of a digital citizenship, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that momentarily. Ultimately, as mentioned, we are all connected as human beings. While different countries and cultures have different norms and values and expectations, we are all part of a collective. When we interact with one another with that in mind, we're more likely to foster meaningful, safe, compassionate connections with one another. Something that is important to consider is with so many different backgrounds and expectations, the perception of appropriate behavior can be slightly altered. What's appropriate for one person might not be appropriate for another person, which complicates these connections a bit more. But if we take a step back and truly recognize what is important for us to do for the betterment of others, despite our differences, we have shared human needs. to belong, to be connected, to be cared for, and to be safe. Operating with these thoughts in mind assists us in more responsibly connecting with one another online. We learn about how to interact with others through their interactions with us. So if we are treated with respect and kindness and compassion and consideration, we're more likely to reflect that back in our relationships. If we are treated disrespectfully and our needs, desires, and concerns are invalidated, met with resistance, or devalued, it forms a picture in our minds of how others will react to us and how we should treat others. There often is this thought of, well, other people aren't treating me kindly, so why should I treat them kindly? While that is an understandable thought, it would be beneficial to reiterate the message to children to treat people the way that you want to be treated. Another consistent term that I will likely be bringing up throughout this talk is congruence. Are we in congruence with the way that we present ourselves to the world? It can be extremely easy to modify aspects of who we are, which ultimately are going to alter the manner that we are interacting with one another. We have a responsibility to one another to have authentic connections, to be genuine and open and honest to the extent that it is safe, of course. I always want to give a caveat of, there are certain things about us that we aren't going to want to divulge in the online platform, or at least not so readily. So the responsibility isn't necessarily to completely divulge every single aspect of who you are and what you like and what you want and all of those things, because it is important for us to protect ourselves. However, when we start to venture into this mindset of, I want to be somebody completely different because I'm so disconnected from who I am as a person, or I don't like who I am or how I'm presenting myself to the world, let me do something else, let me be something else. When that is at the expense of another person, or it hinders or it inhibits our interactions in some way, that's when it starts to become a problem. And it is our responsibility to be as authentic as we can in our connections. Digital citizenship is huge. So it is the ability to safely and responsibly access digital technologies and being active and respectful towards others, which we were just talking about. This does go hand in hand with responsibility. The digital world is constantly growing. It's expanding at rapid rates. As digital citizens, we want to continue to learn and grow our ability to use and understand technology. There is a sociocultural evolution in the digital world. For some, that results in disinterest and, frankly, quite a bit of anxiety. Oftentimes when something new is introduced to our human collective, we have some people who immediately push away and highlight all of the detriments and concerns, understandably so. We operate from our nervous system. We can become quite anxious when faced with uncertainty, and we behave in a manner that will keep us safe. We want to have self-preservation, and our nervous system is a gauge for us to keep us safe. When we don't understand something and we inhibit ourselves from understanding it because of fear, we're not actually growing as a collective. Now, while some do operate from this place of what's referred to as moral panic, others do open up to innovation and leaning into something that is unfamiliar or new. Helping our children recognize that no matter how much we all know, there is still so much to know, and that our digital platform houses our collective knowledge base and is growing at rapid rates. Children will start to become better able to navigate the digital world and enhance their digital citizenship. Online communication and connection comes up a lot. Cyberbullying is a significant concern. As I mentioned, a lot of times people feel a bit more comfortable saying things behind the screen because there is protection, because they can openly express something with probably fewer repercussions than if they were face to face with someone. Because there's a lot that we can do to hide behind what we're saying. When we are entering into a space and we aren't connecting to our emotions in the healthiest of manners, it's very easy for us to place our emotional discomfort outwardly and onto others. Now, something that is common in my work with children and teenagers is to assist them in identifying and expressing their emotions. It is very challenging for any human to connect to some more challenging emotions. Consistently, I inform people that the only way over is through, and really that means sitting in a space of feeling and processing and releasing our emotions. Having an ability to express those emotions without as many consequences, or even recognizing the emotional impact that it has on other people, makes it so much easier to just behave impulsively to release what it is that we might need to release at that time. It is okay to channel our emotions into the digital platform, have cathartic release, and being mindful of how our interactions impact another person is of utmost importance. Being a digital citizen is really having empathy, compassion, and consideration for those that we come into contact with and those that we don't come into contact with in this space. The more connected we feel, the more likely we are to want to behave for the betterment of all of us. The more disconnected we feel, the more likely it is for us to not really care so much about how we're interacting with others and how they're receiving our interactions. An essential way of enhancing our understanding and thus our interactions online is by offering children an opportunity to ask questions about what they see and what they're coming to understand, how the digital world works. As more and more information is integrated into our digital ecosystem, it becomes harder to decipher between accurate and inaccurate information from reliable and unreliable sources. We want to critically analyze what we are presented with. Digital safety, understanding internet privacy, and how to have healthy, protected interactions online. There are 4 main risks associated with digital safety: content, contact, conduct, and contract. So the content risks are pieces of information, websites that are upsetting, disgusting, uncomfortable. It's accessing information online that might be age inappropriate. We are one click away from everything online. When children are entering in the digital space and they're not as aware, this tends to really concern caregivers understandably so. Oftentimes, though, instead of teaching children how to navigate these spaces, I've noticed that it's removed. And an issue with this is if children aren't learning how to navigate the digital platform in safe ways, they're not building the skills necessary for future interactions. Sometimes when adults have discomforts, it's harder for them to convey certain messages to children because the intention is, I want to protect you. I don't want you to be scared. I don't want you to worry. If we aren't preparing children for being safe online and making decisions that are best for their mind and body, they're not necessarily going to know how to interact when they are confronted with uncomfortable situations. Conduct risks. This was discussed a little bit ago and tends to be a huge problem. Cyberbullying is a significant concern. Contract risks. Children very likely don't understand what it is that is being asked of them, or even what they might be disclosing by just clicking a button. How many times have we rapidly scrolled through some contract just to sign it, just to move forward? We want to be aware of the permission that we're granting and what we're granting that permission for. What to do? Well, there's quite a few things that we can do to remain safe. And also, this corresponds to being a safe digital citizen. The regulations and expectations that are discussed at home serve as a foundation for ongoing interaction. The American Academy of Pediatrics created a family media plan. The family media plan includes a list of media priorities to choose from, practical tips to help make the plan work. They express why it's important. You can print and share the finished plan, and there's an option to save the plan and return and make changes accordingly, because ultimately, as our lives transform, differing needs might occur, or there might be certain rules for younger children, but then as children get older and they are able to show a greater sense of responsibility and interaction in the digital platform, it might shift a bit. We want to be open and honest with children about the internet, highlighting the benefits and reflecting on the dangers. How can children recognize when they have entered into a space that might not be the safest? What boundaries can be put in place for this child to safely exit where they are and not go back to that same space? Human beings are curious creatures. And when children are told that they cannot do something, a lot of times it makes them want to do it. I always joke, it's like having a red button, right? And you put the red button out in the open and you tell people, don't touch the red button. What is everyone going to do? They're going to walk by and touch the red button. Well, I guess I can't say everybody. A lot of people are going to walk by and going to want to touch the red button. But if you say, there's a red button out in the open, you're welcome to touch it anytime you want, oftentimes less of a desire to want to press that button because there's permission to do so. So we want to make sure that we're being mindful of what messages we are directly and indirectly conveying when we're talking about safety and boundaries. How can children have a sense of autonomy and independence and control while also abiding by the rules and regulations that are being implemented for their best interest? Many devices and websites have caregiver controls, permissions, and supervision. And there are a variety of privacy settings that can be programmed or implemented for that added layer of protection. It's important to explicitly indicate what is okay and not okay to be disclosed online. A lot of websites ask for personal information or try to connect a social media profile for ease of access and logging in. Sometimes when we just grant those permissions, not really quite sure what all we're granting permission for, it may appear that we're just sharing a picture and a name and an email address, but there might be more information that is being obtained. Helping children recognize this contributes to greater safety through awareness. The more that we know, the better we are to look out for potential dangers. The less that we're aware of, the easier it becomes to fall into unsafe spaces. The last consideration is digital ethics. As we've explored, we want to make sure that we're using the digital platform appropriately. We want to respect the privacy and property of ourselves and of other people. When we are connecting in this digital ecosystem where there are a variety of people and practices and norms, it can be challenging to figure out the best method for practicing in an ethical manner. While ethical standards might vary across cultures, there is a shared human ethical obligation, not doing harm to one another, proceeding in the best interest of the collective, and protecting one another. From early childhood, when we first absorb information from the world, we are forming an idea of who we are and how we are to be. We also often view others from those early childhood experiences. If we form trusting, loving connections, we're more likely to feel that other humans are safe and there can be mutually beneficial relationships. However, if we have early interactions with others that are unsafe and dangerous, we proceed accordingly in other relationships because that was the foundation of human to human connection. Oftentimes with mental health struggles, especially in the digital platform, people encounter difficulties with a sense of self. Who are we in the digital world? My primary theoretical orientation as a psychologist is humanistic psychology. Ultimately, I meet people as they are, where they are, and try to assist them in aligning with their real self. I mentioned the word congruence earlier. When we are in congruence, the way we feel inside matches the way we present ourselves outside. From a humanistic framework, a lot of times people struggle with mental health because there is incongruence between who they are and who they present themselves to be. So getting at the reason why people feel the need to be incongruent really helps foster therapeutic growth. I always say insight and awareness is key. When we recognize why it is that we do the things that we do in the way that we do them, we can then figure out next steps. If we don't even know why we're doing the things that we're doing, it's really hard to evoke change because we're not necessarily getting at the true deep reason why we are doing what we're doing in a manner that we're doing it. Oftentimes when it comes to the self, when we're in incongruence, it's common that there are aspects of who we are that don't feel good, aren't welcomed, aren't appreciated, or have been inhibited or silenced in some way, shape, or form. As I mentioned, we form an idea of who we are based on how other people tell us that we are. So if somebody has a struggle with who they are as a person, it is possible that they can project those thoughts and feelings onto us. We then absorb that, take ownership, and assume that there's something wrong with us. Now, I do want to say it is important for us to be mindful of the feedback that we are getting from other people. Sometimes what we are told might not feel the best is for our best interest. I also want to reflect on the real, false, and ideal selves. So the real self is who you actually are, to your core. The false self is your presentation. And then the ideal self is where we're going. In other words, we are constantly growing into the best version of ourselves, or at least that's the hope. In terms of developmental considerations, there is a lot happening in children's brains and bodies throughout childhood. From brain and cognitive development to physical development, emotional development, relationship and social development, and general challenges that children are navigating on a day-to-day basis all impacts how a child is not only engaging in the digital platform, but also understanding what it is that they're consuming in the digital platform. Recognizing where our children are at developmentally will assist us in conveying appropriate messages. Coming back to the powers of play, as a registered play therapist supervisor, I incorporate a lot of play in my work. It is much easier for children to convey their thoughts, feelings, and experiences through the medium of play. I do want to note that in the world of play, it can be very beneficial to try on various aspects of ourselves, especially for children when they're trying to uncover who they really are. So while the underlying message is to assist children in fully aligning with who they are in the digital world, it's also okay for children to fully immerse themselves in a world of play, which might mean that they are testing out various aspects of other ways of being. This does not equate to inauthenticity. Rather, it provides this opportunity for ongoing uncovering. It is common for humans to view other people's highlight reels and feel a sense of inferiority or inadequacy in some way, which results in negative feelings towards ourselves and might result in desiring to be someone that they are not. But the thing that people don't realize is when we change who we are because we perceive other people as being happier or better in some way, we're actually missing all that really is happening behind the scenes for that person. Is what the person is conveying accurate, or is it a snapshot of their life or how they want other people to think that their life is? Helping children recognize how so many other people tend to represent a false narrative on the screen can help children feel more aligned with who they are, especially when it doesn't align with the lives and stories that others are providing around them. How can children, and really all humans, become more aligned in the digital platform? How can we find balance between our authentic self and our curious exploration? We just want to make sure that we are finding deep connection with ourselves, because that's going to help us establish deep connections with others. When we feel disconnected from who we are more likely to be disconnected from other people. Teaching children from a young age how to align with who they truly are and engage in kind interactions with others online, the more we can establish a digital world that is most beneficial for all of us. Thank you for joining me in this space today. I hope that it was informative, and I also hope that you find authentic alignment between your inner and digital self.